All right, so we're working off of a few handicaps today. On the first hand, I left our podcasting equipment up at my other place, so we're makeshifting.
We're not going to get into the whole one mic thing, right? We're not making that a thing.
I don't think we should keep it in the episode. We're also makeshifting on my intro line because you wanted to hear what my intro line was going to be?
Yeah, of course.
I had this ready to go.
Yes.
Until very recently, it was going to be, welcome to S&P's Why Not Us, the podcast that trusts soccer's VAR more than it trusts LeBron to make a decision.
Oh, I see what you did there.
It was good. I liked it.
Yeah.
He ruined it again.
I get it.
Classic LeBron, just screwing up my intro, screwing up the NBA schedule with Adam Silver because he took so long. And, heading a city I don't love that much. But
LeBron also forced me to adjust my intro with the caveat, so we both kind of had a little...
Right, and so with that in mind, screw that guy. I'm going to use him anyway in the intro. So let's go. Welcome to S&P's Why Not Us, the podcast that's not backing down from the new look Sixers, king it all. I'm your host, Scott Greenhut, and on the other side of the mic, that's very close to both of us right now, good friend Peter Olczyk.
Indeed. Great to be here. Yep, looking forward to even more LeBron conversation a little bit later. But let's get to actually a pretty packed episode today.
Yeah.
So, in today's episode, we'll take a look at teams that should be active in a unique and tricky MLB trade deadline, get back on our high horse to make the Hall of Fame case for Keith Hernandez, discuss some storylines as NFL training camps open their doors, and continue our Jets look-back summer series with a playoff game I had mostly browned out, likely for the better, until recently. But we begin with final thoughts on the World Cup. Okay, so it's been about a week since we went final on the World Cup. Just a couple of things to start.
Yeah.
As we've read a lot about and heard, certainly the game was control over chaos. It was a possession clinic for Spain. For me, they kind of just took the air out of the soccer ball. There was that one waning moment, if you will, in the 117th minute, where, of course, Argentina's down 1-0, where they went down about 11 minutes before that.
Yeah, and they decided to actually push.
And Messi finally has a look,
Yeah.
but it's immediately blocked, as I recall, in the face by the midfielder, Mikel Merino. And that was sort of it. That was kind of the one opportunity, since they didn't really have a shot on goal at that point. But in terms also of the game, on the Argentina side, it was fun to watch the goalkeeper, Emiliano Martínez, with his 11 saves, and the most in a World Cup final. He was great, and that at least made a little bit of the drama towards the end.
Yeah, I guess I'm just going to take a step back and give a few perspectives on the World Cup overall. It was a massive endeavor because of the expanded team, 48 teams, 104 matches, 3 co-host nations. And really, if you're a fan of soccer, it gave you a lot, right? Like the host city report card, Seattle Rock, Kansas City, shown, Meadowlands even worked, and then the games in Mexico, fairly epic. Watch parties around America, just considered a universal success. Cinderella's story in the Cape Verde run. A runner-up game that saw a record number of goals. Decent showing by the U.S. and Andres Cantor's goal call for the second Argentinian goal against England. It is, I can't believe you haven't listened to it. It is amazing and lives up to his reputation and then some.
Can I just say on that, since you mentioned it, that I did hear that people who listened to the runner-up game, where there were, I think, 10 goals, 6-4, that listening to him in that game, that has actually been on my list, because they said that they can't believe he still had any sort of a voice by the end of that.
Yes, I watched a few World Cup games in Spanish with some folks who preferred just that call in general. And then lastly, there was Messi, who at age 39, notwithstanding the final game, just had an epic tournament. Again, if you're a fan of soccer, wow, the stars aligned. And yet, if I may quote loosely the coach Dennis Greene from the other football, our relationship with soccer is what we thought it is. Okay? This is already fading fast from memory, and it'll be even faster now that LeBron has taken his talents to Philadelphia. We've discussed the final a little bit already. Won't do that again. The diving, as bad as it's ever been. Then you have this VAR system, which caused ridiculous delays, tied to an offsides rule that I felt like even the aficionados were a little confused by at times.
Although that was the best part of the VAR.
Yeah, it looks like it's real, but you know what wasn't a good part? People celebrating like crazy, both fans and players, only to later see a flag go up and just have their heart ripped from their chest.
Just one other thing on the VAR. The smart ball, which I thought was actually pretty interesting, where earlier in the tournament, it actually did connect with hair, and it said that, no goal because hair was contacted.
Yeah, hair is part of the body.
But somehow the smart ball, when it went up towards the top with the wires, it did not make that connection, even though the ball came straight down, and that was a moment. So I did like the idea of the smart ball, but maybe it wasn't quite as smart as it could have been.
Yeah. So I guess with all of this in mind, thanks for the memories, and we'll see what happens in 4 more years. Right? Entertaining. I just don't see it as a United States phenomenon.
Let me one final thing that just left me from the tournament. So Norway, first of all, the synchronized rowing fans in the fandom. That was an instant classic. That was spectacular. I cannot get those guys out of my head.
Fandom was huge. Scotland out drinking Boston? Come on now.
But so those fans in particular, just that wave in the crowd, perfect. And then, of course, on the players' side there, the full Erling Haaland experience, both amazing on the field and off, putting the cowboy hat on, just really embracing America, which got me thinking a little bit in terms of spinning it forward. He is only 26 years old. So just a question, and again, I am not the soccer aficionado here, like yourself, but could he be the one to actually come over to MLS sooner rather than later as a final act? Because it feels like it's a good fit, and I just wonder, unlike Messi coming in late to Miami and that being great, if a really good up-and-coming European player somehow, and if the money was there, of course, to make that happen, I wonder a little bit if that could actually help growth, MLS, that kind of thing, because we know it's not really going to happen from the U.S. player side of things, at least in the short term. Just 1.5 cents on that.
Okay. I'd say it would be interesting, but it just would take so much more than that, in my opinion. It's so dominant abroad, and there's all the good players are there.
But if he does come over, I'd like a quarter.
All right. Well, fine. We'll agree. We'll agree on that. All right. Moving to the diamond, the trade deadline. We're tick-tock on the clock. We were going to discuss a couple of candidates that might be on the move, or teams that might be thinking about making moves. You can start.
Yeah, so the trade deadline is particularly tricky, as I said at the top. Right now, there's only 6 or 7 teams that are really out of a wild card race, kind of 3 or 4 in the AL, 3 in the NL, which makes, with so many potential buyers and some question marks and just a few sellers, complicated. That said, a few teams. The Chicago White Sox, who I just kind of want to wish cast into the playoffs at this point, totally ahead of schedule. But what a fun season they've been having. They're in first place right now, 3.5 up on Cleveland in the division, and about the same in the wild card. What do they need? Like, most teams, starting pitcher, a relief pitcher, maybe a veteran catcher. They have a big injury right now with Kyle Teal, who has come on, who's got a high ankle sprain. So here's a player whose name seems to come up every year this time of year, Sandy Alcantara of the Marlins, under control still for 27, 28 team option. Miami about 10 days ago was actually very strong in the wild card picture. Right now they have fallen on harder times. They're 500. They're 3 back in the wild card. That would take a lot for that to happen, but I just wonder in terms of whether it's him or whether it's another pitcher that's maybe more of a rental. I'd love to see the White Sox kind of do a little something because they have young pitching that's going to run under innings limits, and it would be great to kind of continue this momentum during the year. Yeah. Well, on Boston, so let's talk about the Bo Sox. Now, here's a good stat. On June 16th, they were 32-46. They had a 5.6% playoff probability. Per Tom Verducci, who is, I like to mention a lot on the pod.
Yes.
Of the 473 teams with a record that bad after 78 games, 0 have made the playoffs. Well, I think we're going to see a difference this year. Boston is in pretty good shape, solidly in the third wild card right now, and actually not even out of the division at this point.
Yeah.
What do they need? They really need a right-handed power hitter, particularly at shortstop.
Right.
Trevor Story has been injured actually for the last month or so with a sports hernia, TBD on August. A name and a team that typically doesn't make a move at this point. But Zach Neto, shortstop for the Angels, he's having a very good year with Pop. Pretty solid prospect coming up. It would require a big haul. In terms of what Boston has, they do have their former overall number 4 pick, Marcelo Mayer. He's been up and down, had some injuries, but certainly talented. So it wouldn't surprise me this year if the Angels actually consider moves like that, and just to name a player.
Yep, I had him down as well, and I guess the only other, we didn't talk about Hunter Greene yet, right?
Hunter Greene, we have not.
Yeah, well, Hunter Greene, the Reds buried in last place in the NL Central, looking to sell, open to moving him. So I hear.
That might be the biggest name of them all if the baseball gods on both sides were able to figure that one out.
Yeah, so we'll see. He sounds skeptical. That's cool.
I do, only because it just seems like it would require so much to make that marriage happen. But you know what? That's why I said it's a tricky deadline, so we'll see. And here's a name before we get into some more Mets stuff in a minute. How about Luis Robert Jr., who is back for the Mets from the back injury? Has hit 2 out in the last few days, is being showcased, of course, pretty aggressively. $20 million club option for next year with just a $2 million buyout, so the money doesn't seem much. In terms of Mets, Phillies in that rivalry, if they provide the best offer, it wouldn't shock me if there was a fit there. It would be interesting and compelling, but just to put a name out there for Philly, because they're always looking for right-handed bats, it seems like this time of year.
You know what? More power to them.
We shall see.
Yes.
We shall see. All right. So now we turn to Keith Hernandez. And a little bit of context here. Ahead of the upcoming August 1st 40th celebration for the 1986 World Series team, which should be great at Citi Field. That might be the highlight of this summer, actually, with the way things are going. We thought it would be a fun time to talk about Keith's Hall of Fame case. This is your favorite player. The case is strong.
Hall of Fame inductions also happening this weekend up in Cooperstown.
Yes, tomorrow.
Couldn't be more timely. Yes, Keith Hernandez, my favorite Met of all time, which therefore makes him my favorite baseball player of all time. For me, it's just the no-brainer of no-brainer locks to put this man in the Hall of Fame. Let's start here with some offense. So WRC plus is a stat, it's basically weighted runs created plus. Yeah. It just looks at everything that you do from a hitting standpoint, power, walks, average, everything. It adjusts for ballpark and league scoring environment. 100 is baseline. His career number for that statistic, 131. For reference, George Brett, kind of a good player, 132. Tony Perez right there at the same number. So we're going to get to his fielding in a second.
Yeah.
But from a hitting perspective, he is extremely solid, Also, from a smell test perspective, having watched the guy every at bat, he took as a New York Met practically, there was no one I wanted to come up more in an important situation. It wasn't only because I liked him, but it just always felt like he had the best chance of doing a smart thing with the bat, doing what he had to do to move the runners over, get the clutch hit. So I'm going to take a pause there because we want to get to the fielding, which is his marquee stuff. But on hitting alone, quite the resume.
Absolutely. Before we get into the defense, just a little bit more context for folks in terms of actually what would happen in terms of his, the Hall of Fame process. So there's something called the Contemporary Baseball Era Player Committee, which meets every few years. So there are these rotating committees, which is typically a good thing to relook at candidates, after they were on writers' ballots. So you need 75% of votes. 16 players actually get selected for these ballots. Now in 2025, Jeff Kent was one of those players. These are for players that made their primary contributions to the game since 1980, and Jeff Kent's going to go into the Hall tomorrow. Now Keith was not on this most recent one. However, there's a really good case for him to be on the next one. Who makes up these committees? Generally, this most recent time was 7 Hall of Fame players, 6 MLB execs, and then 3 media members and historians. So those are the 16 kind of votes. Now I'm thinking the big thing is just to get him into the room, because as we start to talk about the defense, and I can start on that, that's where I think the conversation is going to get really interesting. So here's a stat. Keith Hernandez is the only first baseman to have a defensive WAR, which is actually positive of all the first basemen that are in the Hall of Fame right now. The median is negative 11.6. And that's actually compared with other positions. So that sort of works in, folks that are center fielders, players that play up the middle, that kind of thing. Taking it, sort of zooming out a little bit, what he did was he transformed the position. Before Keith, more typically, hulking sluggers with a glove most likely would be at first base. He was a weapon in the field, and I'll get into a few things and you can jump in, but where did he shine? His range was a wow. He had an insanely accurate arm. He made the 3-6-3 double play back to first easy, like clockwork. And then, of course, he had the signature bunt charge in, past the mound, throw it to third base, and then that would be the 3-5-4 double plays sometimes when the second baseman would be covering first. So he made these kinds of things normal, in addition to just charging in by the mound and throwing a dart to second base on a force. This is the type of conversation that I think the room is going to have. And I'll just finish with one more point. I was thinking there's a basketball analogy in terms of transforming the position, and it's Steph Curry. Steph in the three-point shot, he kind of changed what the three was, not just from shooting farther back, but also being able to get his own shot off the dribble, that kind of thing. I feel like that's what Keith did at first base, and there really aren't too many comps, if any, that's similar to. So I'll pause there and jump in more.
Yes, first of all, great points, and I love the comp to Steph Curry. That's kind of company that I'm looking for here. Listen, we talked some of the defensive stats. How about just go into the basics? 11 Gold Gloves.
Yeah.
Of the 7 position players ever to have 11 or more, Keith's the only one not in the Hall. How about you gave the WAR stat? That I looked it up. There's an equivalent stat that Baseball Reference puts together called bWAR. So they did it kind of a little differently. He's at 60.3, which all you need to know is the most of any eligible first baseman not tied to PED allegations, who already is enshrined. So he has that. There's also a publication, you may have heard of it. It is called Yardbarker.
Yeah.
It's a USA Today owned property.
Yeah.
They like to make lists. One of their lists is the 10 most egregious MLB Hall of Fame snubs by position.
I love it.
Keith Hernandez is the first baseman pick for that lineup. And let's just throw in a couple last things. 1 MVP, 2 World Series, and just the clear captain of the New York Mets when they won their 86 title. I would say, besides Gary Carter, Keith Hernandez probably called more pitches on that team than anyone else, including Mel Stottlemyre. He was the guy that went into the mound during the huddles and told Jesse Orosco the next pitch is going to be a curveball or I'm going to kill you. Things along those lines.
Kevin Bass, Game 6, epic in the NLCS.
Yeah,
100%.
I mean, it's just the I always had a feeling that he belonged to be there, but doing the homework for this assignment, I'm more dialed up than I've ever been.
And he also had MVP votes each year from 1980 through 1986. So you put all of that content together, and the case from 1980 on really couldn't be more compelling, and 1,000% on the leadership point that you sort of eloquently just talked about.
Yes, so here's hoping. I'm glad you brought up the new mechanism that gives him a shot.
December 2028 is when this will sort of be the topic.
Great. So let's go number 17. With that, we will transition over to the NFL.
Yeah.
We're going to do a couple training camp storylines and then go into part 2 of an ongoing segment. But let's just start with some of the headlines that have grabbed your attention.
Yeah, so training camp has just kind of kicked off here. A couple of things to start. Minnesota, the quarterback competition, and it truly does seem to be an actual competition. Not everybody thought that would be the case. But Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy. Kyler Murray comes over as sort of one of the bigger deals during this season. J.J. McCarthy, tough year last year, but I think everything would just happened very quickly for him. So for Kevin O'Connell to actually not name an actual quarterback right now, that probably gives both players a little bit of just calm and being able to do reps throughout the entire preseason without with just giving him more flexibility. I would assume that Kyler Murray will be named, somewhat sooner rather than later as we head towards the end of the preseason, but it'll be interesting to watch. Of course, also the other part to that is Justin Jefferson, who was just sort of selected in the annual execs, coaches, and scout survey as number 2, and I'm sure in his mind and for a lot of other people's mind he'd be number 1. So a lot of motivation for Justin Jefferson this year. Yeah. The other team, San Diego. So there's a new offensive coordinator quarterback combination there. Mike McDaniel comes over. And of course, last year, San Diego had a pretty beaten up offensive line. Joe Alt, who's a star, was in and out of the lineup.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how that partnership goes. And who would have believed that San Diego has no playoff wins in their first 6 years? That seems like an anomaly to me.
So I'm looking at the Rams. I mean, Myles Garrett to the Rams? They talk about upgrading defense, and they also landed Trent McDuffie and Jalen Waddle in free agency. So they have basically built a Super Bowl ready defense in one offseason. And then on the flip side, Cleveland fans probably not that happy about this. I mean, it's the guy, the all-time sack leader. For one season at least, is gone. That franchise just can't get out of its own way.
Yeah, I mean, we'll of course we'll get to that franchise in a minute
exactly.
again. But he gave everything to that team, so I think his place and in terms of number being retired and all things that will happen afterwards is well set.
Yes. So let's segue into talking about Cleveland, but we're really not talking about Cleveland. We're really talking about your New York Jets.
Yeah.
Last week, or rather 2 weeks ago during our last pod, we explored part 1 of your Jets fandom, where we looked at the first time The Jets made it into the playoffs. I believe that was 1982.
The game.
Right?
Yeah, the
that
81
game.
season.
Yeah, 81 season, the game 82. So let's dive into part 2 of this series and, head to 1986. Wow. This one was quite the gut punch. But let's talk about 86 in general. The Jets lost their last 5 regular season games. Still got into the playoffs as a wild card. So let's just start there. What did that stretch feel like as a fan? Relief that they got in, or like, oh God, what are we even doing here?
Yeah, I mean, a 10-1 start for this team is just impossible to compute as a Jets fan. That doesn't work. There was also an amazing game in there, 51-45 over Miami, the overtime game. Wesley Walker, I think 4 touchdowns, my guys. So spectacular. Then the 5 straight losses. Lots of injuries during that period of time. Klecko, Gastineau, Lance Mel, who we talked a little bit about last time, were all out leading up to the wild card game. Yeah. This is pretty fun. I saw this in looking up at the first game afterwards. Dan Alexander, who was a guard, maybe 12 years with the Jets, just a really good player. He's in his 10th year at that point. So here's what he said going into the wild card game. The losing streak brought everyone in the nation down on us except my mother. Fantastic. And that pretty much sets the stage for the wild card game.
Yeah, they demolished the Chiefs 35-15. So did that game feel like a turning point?
So the big thing there was quarterback switch.
Yes,
Joe Walton, the head coach, makes a decision rightly after all things going in the wrong direction with 5 straight losses to Pat Ryan. In that game, 3 touchdowns, short passes, no picks, just exactly what you would want in a backup quarterback in that moment. And going into that game, I have 0 expectations, of course. Happy to have a game, but, not expecting it to end up in a win, let alone a comfortable, non-anxiety inducing win. So to put a bow on that wild card game, solid game from Freeman McNeil. Mark Gastineau returns, who had been injured throughout the season, including the last 5 games. 35-15, again, pretty comfortable, and that just leads us.
What was that like? Comfortable?
Yeah, as I said, that season was just 2 different seasons, so we were ready to write the year off. So you feel as though you're playing with house's money at that point to get a game that comes out of nowhere. And to all of a sudden walk into a divisional championship game doesn't matter who you're playing against. That's great, and bring it on.
Great. So then we do head to that divisional round. Cleveland, their first chance at a playoff win since 1969. So super hungry franchise. Freeman McNeil at some point punches it in. Jets go up 20-10. Take me back to right there. 20-10. Has a Jets fan feel watching that lead build on the road?
Let me just say that for anybody that, whether they have skin in the game as a Jets fan or just as an NFL fan, you can watch this game in its entirety, which I did, and it is just a classic playoff football game. Every cliche you could possibly imagine. Lots of fun, by the way, with Don Criqui and Bob Trumpy and NBC doing the game.
I do my homework.
So it was great.
Send me the link.
But to answer your question, going to 2010, at that point you're just thinking, how can the clock get to 0? At 2010, and at this point Kenny O'Brien is now back in the game. Pat Ryan injured himself earlier in the game, so now we're back to our starter, and you're excited, but now you get into just
let's talk about
one moment after another
one
from
moment
that point
after,
on.
Right, and maybe a moment that we need to unfortunately touch on is Mark Gastineau roughing the passer, extends a Brown drive that eventually ties it. Memories of that moment.
So it's
did you know right away that this was?
As I
said,
but when you watch the that play, that was a a roughing the quarterback. It was a clear late hit. Mark Gassner would tell you the same thing. It wasn't one of those just blips. It was two beats afterwards.
Thank God.
That was on third down. So of course, killer penalty. Yeah. And then keep going a little bit. What happens next? They actually get to a 3rd and 10. Cleveland gets about 9 and something yards on 3rd down. And there's another moment. There's this monster measurement where Joe Walton is going ballistic on the sidelines as they spot the ball. It is ruled a first down, and so that happens.
Yes, and that happened back before it was, 4th and inches? Okay, good, first down.
And we should also say, if you're watching this game, which I had not remembered, I don't know if you did, but 1986 was the debut of limited instant replay. So scoring plays and turnovers were reviewed, which happened earlier with a fumble that they actually got right. But this was new territory, so in terms of replay, which I had not remembered. And this was the beginning of everything that we've seen since then. Anyway, we go back to the Jets, and they're in sort of prevent D mode, and I have a little smiley face here because it really did look like it was preventing us from winning the game. Mm-hmm. Cleveland was moving the ball pretty easily. 4 or 5 plays. Kevin Mack, solid player. I'm sure Cleveland Browns fans remember generally Kevin Mack very well and with good thoughts. Scores an easy 1-yard touchdown. Yep. It's 20-17. What happens next, which I had not remembered? Onside kick. No problem. We get the ball. Marion Barber, who is a special teams ace, just gets it, 1 hop, goes straight down. And here's Bob Trumpy right there. Fans are hoping against hope that something strange happens. Now, as a Jet fan, that is the last thing that you kind of want to hear. But it's on brand for sort of going through the whole experience.
Yeah. We don't need announcers putting bad juju out there.
All right, so if you just now you're getting into the last 2 minutes. Here's another crazy play. 3rd and 10. We go kind of run, and then a conservative quarterback draw that goes nowhere. It's technically a sack because it's behind the line of scrimmage, and at that point, any sack in the last 2 minutes, the clock stops until the ball was reset. So there's another thing in terms of time not really working Jets' favor.
Oh, what a bad rule.
Continuing on, Cleveland, we do a great punt. Goes down to the Browns 6. I think it's 108 at that point. But no. 10-yard holding penalty. Marion Barber this time, the same player. So I have to re-kick. And now it's all the way out to the 32, 53 seconds left. So here we go. 53 seconds left. The first play was an easy pass interference. The second play, an absolute dime to Webster Slaughter, who had a great career for Cleveland. Yeah. By the way, we'll get to Bernie Kosar's stats later, but Bernie Kosar threw the ball all over the field in that game. Yeah. Generally, really well.
We would call this the drive, except that was really the next game.
Correct. So that goes to the 5. Anyway, we get to 15 seconds left. There's an underthrow, an almost interception. This is an absolute moment. A dive up in the air off of the fingertips would have been a great play, but no. They decide to kick it on 2nd down for a short field goal. No problem there. Overtime 2020.
First overtime,
2020. Yes. Do you want to ask, or you want me to keep going a little bit?
I think, you can keep going. I don't know how you survive into a second overtime. They're quite rare in the NFL, especially back then when you didn't have the you get a field goal, I can get a field goal rule.
So it's sudden death at the field goal point. And guess who wins the coin toss? The New York Jets win the coin toss. Fantastic.
Right. Used to be a big advantage.
Yeah, get it to the 34. The drive kind of stalls. Cleveland gets the ball back and gets it all the way down. A beautiful throw to Reggie Langhorne from Kosar, about 35 yards. And here's Mark Mosley again. Chip shot, 23-yard field goal.
Miss.
Pushes it to the right.
Wide right.
Again, the football gods right there. You're thinking, wow.
That's it.
Now we have it.
Yeah, right.
That's it.
Right.
A lot of things have gone right, but that was the thing that went the most right. Jets get the ball. There was definitely a missed face mask penalty on Freeman McNeil, but that wouldn't have been something, and still even the rules today is they're still kind of working on whether they want to go back to that. Not quite a thing. And then you just get to, what was obviously going to happen. Cleveland gets the ball, break a few runs. It gets an understandably exhausted Jets defense. Mark Mosley gets redemption, 27 yards, ball game, 23-20. And then when something like that happens, and I can tell you where I was because you might be interested.
Yeah, this is, of course, where all this goes. Where were you and what'd you do?
So once again, this was over the holidays, so I was actually upstate with family. This was the early game. This was the 12:30 Saturday game. So I excused myself, went upstairs, and I can't remember exactly which book I grabbed, and I politely said no to the dinner and...
Yeah, I was at that dinner, but we trudged on without you.
That I don't recall.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
But amazing.
But didn't blame you. I was like, no, he needs his space. And I guess, so I don't know what other bow you can put on that turd if you're you. Perhaps the crosstown rivals winning that year, or did it just not even matter?
Oh,
because that is the first Super Bowl for my Giants.
Oh my God, you had all of those moments afterwards. Yeah, no, that's not where and I just honestly, what I was thinking about after watching this game was Cleveland. Bernie Kosar, his stats from that game: 33 for 64, 489 yards, which became an NFL playoff record at that point, until Tom Brady throws for 505. And Big Ben was second with 501 against Cleveland. So that is just exactly like being a Jets fan. So I'm very simpatico when it comes to the Cleveland Browns franchise.
I was going to say, if it makes you feel any better, which it doesn't, but it's something, they're continually in the same boat as you.
I think these two fan bases, and I would love to find, there's so many great Cleveland Browns fans, just to hang out over a cold one, talk playoff football, go back and forth. It would probably go for 2 or 3 hours. It would be amazing for both of us. So if you're a Cleveland Browns fan,
right,
I'm happy to chat.
Yeah, send us your contact information. Okay, so that ends part 2 of the Jets walkthrough. Fear not, fans, there is more to come in this multi-part series as we explore Peter's steadfast fandom for the Jets. They don't deserve him, but here he sits. I was going to say stands, but we're sharing this. Here he sits. More fun and games on the horizon.
100%. Well, we touched on it before, but let's get into a little bit in detail, enlightening, for LeBron. So LeBron James makes a decision yesterday to go to Philly. Of course, Philly has a 43-year title drought, and that's a little bit of something as we get into kind of the details as to what happened here.
Yeah.
Clearly, he talked very much about winning. He didn't, technically mention a 5th ring, but I think that's definitely fair to go after a 5th ring. Listen,
I thought he was going to get 5 in Miami.
They
all said it. Not 1, not 2,
a perfectly good option.
Not 3. You remember that?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Sorry, let's keep going. My bad.
But it's the relationships, I think, again, when you think about where maybe kind of what helped him get to this point. Tyrese Maxey has been a workout buddy in LA for the last couple of years. He Clutch Sports in general. Nick Nurse is actually also represented by Clutch Sports. Bob Myers goes on the Rich Paul podcast and basically tells LeBron, if you're listening, this is your best choice to win. That's fair. Listen, this team is stacked. This starting 5 of Tyrese Maxey, BJ Edgecombe, Jaylen Brown, let's not forget that happened, Joel Embiid, and LeBron. So I will say, as we kind of think about the Knicks side of all of this business, it's great to be the hunted. That's the thing.
I know.
We are the hunted because we did just win the championship. How amazing would it be, both for the NBA and for these two franchises, to re-tee it up in a rematch, all that?
Do you know that the stats for the Sixers to win the title now match the Knicks. You can look up different books and different things.
Yeah.
But I mean, roughly, they were about 20-1, and now they're 9-1, which is where our Knickerbockers are in two fell swoops. With Jaylen Brown and then the King.
It's 1 and 1A.
But I mean, the Sixers, I also really don't like that city.
Yeah, you touched on that earlier.
Yeah, let's very briefly. Rangers, Flyers, the Flyers. Some of the bulliest, bloodiest players that have ever donned skates. Dave Schultz, Rick Tocchet, and Ron Hextall, who used his goalie stick as a hatchet. Then moving on to our baseball friends, the Phillies, taking Lenny Dykstra, taking Zach Wheeler, just generally dislike those guys. Wow. Not a fan. And then Eagles. Ugh.
Well, that goes without saying.
The Eagles, right. They're as bad as it gets. If you're a Giants fan, then we never forget about the miracle in the Meadowlands of '78. And also just going to Giants-Eagles games rather at the Meadowlands. I mean, for sure winning the award of most annoying away fans. Eagles. The Sixers were kind of like the one team I could tolerate. Dr. J, Andrew Toney, I was like, they're fine. They're harmless. They don't do anything. Game on. Here we go.
This could be such a wonderful rivalry, a legit rivalry now. So let's see what happens.
And guess what? Hey, Joel, we're still going to come to your house. Okay. And we're still going to be the majority of fans in there. So saddle up, big boy.
And I will say on Joel Embiid, LeBron James is the best thing that could have possibly happened to Joel Embiid. For a guy putting sort of the injury stuff on the side and that he's had to deal with, just in terms of leadership, mentor, having that older basketball IQ is only going to be the best possible thing for Joel Embiid, and we shall see what happens.
And maybe he'll give him a little conditioning routine as well.
Oh my God, 100%. All right, so we will move from LeBron to our PS. Here we're going to do mini golf.
Okay.
So I thought maybe it would be fun to actually talk a little mini golf and say what makes a great experience, whether it's a great course, any pet peeves. Where do you want to start on summer?
First of all, I told you when you sent the topic. Yeah. I love a great PS topic. Mini golf for the Greene family. Mm-hmm. I do not have the most competitive sports family, both with kids and wife. Whole thing changes once we get to the mini golf course. Every single person there believes that they should win. Oh. And it gets a little feisty.
Are you using a scorecard?
Yeah, we use the scorecard down. It gets competitive. There's active heckling. There's accusations of cheating. You move the ball a little bit too far.
Yikes.
So it's for us, like this is our gauntlet, The other thing I'd say that's great about mini golf, we love the split path hole. So when you can either go one way, which maybe is a little easier, but it's going to take a couple more strokes most likely, or you go for the glory and go the other way. That's always our.
That's fair.
That's one of our favorite holes.
That's fair.
What you got?
Yeah, well, first of all, on the family side of things, I would say for the handful of times that we've done it as a family, maybe it's 50-50 if we've come out of that experience all feeling good about it, versus it just being, a little bit too stressful. But anyway, it was always a good effort. Yeah. In terms of the likes of mini golf, for me, it's generally outdoors. It's under the lights. If there's nearby local ice cream, fantastic.
Right.
In terms of the actual course, I really do enjoy a good working windmill, or at least a similar timing risk-reward impediment, kind of just that thing right in the middle. I feel as though that mini golf owners aren't as focused on that these days, but that's one thing.
Yeah,
I also enjoy multi-level holes. You talked about split holes.
Yeah, the multi-level holes I have mixed feelings on, and I'll tell you why. I feel like most golfers can kind of get it into hole number one most of the time. I mean, not every time, but just let's assume that happens.
Yeah.
then you're kind of looking at pot luck for whether that thing rolls into the second hole or not. And I don't know. It's like, yeah, you can kind of get a hole in one that way, but it's not really the skill that we're looking for.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
It's a little randomness.
I will add that, of course, I enjoy creative or themed courses. Those can be really good.
Yeah.
In terms of the pet peeve side of things, on a particular hole, the sloped sort of anthill holes, where you have kind of just that big hill where you have to hit it pretty fast, and if you don't hit it, it either goes back down or right across the other side.
Yeah.
I've never been a fan of that one. That's specific, but that's one that's in my head.
Yeah.
And also just sand. I don't really need kind of sort of sand traps on either side. Just have the impediments be on the course itself. What are you going to do? Actually go grab a pitching wedge or something and chip out rather than just re-tee it from the beginning? So yeah. I don't need sand.
Here's my biggest pet peeve for mini golf. Really simple. You're playing behind a group who thinks they're at the Masters, lining up every shot. There's no gimmies. They don't just call it a...
But you guys are pretty competitive. So
yeah, but we move. We move. That's not us.
Okay.
We move with pace. Sometimes it's like the little kid, let me hit again. Let me hit again. And then so he's just whacking around. Dad's treating it like the master. You're just sitting there. You just want to go. Can you just go?
And you don't ever, is this like a curb moment where you try to just have a quick conversation, or how does that
it's so
out?
Awkward because there's nowhere to fit in, ahead of them. It's just, it can be tight. So that's one thing. I have one final comment / question on the mini golf thing. Thoughts on the inevitable final hole of the kind of, call it clown's nose or whatever.
Get the free game.
You get the free game. They do it so they can take your golf ball.
Right.
I have thoughts. If you're playing a competitive game of mini golf, here are your score options on that hole.
Oh.
You ready?
Yeah.
You can get a 1 if you get it in the nose.
Okay.
Or you can get a 2 because you don't get it in the nose and they eat your ball.
So has that scoring actually impacted any of your family rounds?
Yes, you can't make moves on the final hole. It's ridiculous. I know why they do it. They're worried you're going to take the ball and go for another round of mini golf. But let me tell you, people that do that, they enjoy the sport a little too much. It's time to wrap it up. Hand your ball in like a mensch and call it a day.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. I never particularly, at that point, generally, I'm pretty much good with the round. So
yeah,
I don't need that.
Yeah, we're ready for the ice cream.
Again, I am looking
ready for
the
slushy
at that point. Yeah.
Let's call it a day.
All right, no, that's fair. We agree. Okay, and with that, that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Until the next time, I'm Peter Olczyk.
And I'm Scott Greenhut. Make sure to subscribe to S&P's Why Not Us on your favorite podcast player. And check out our website to leave questions, comments, give us an idea for a PS topic in the future. All can be found at our website, whynotuspod.com. And until next time, Peter and I are going to put this episode in the books.